Hey everyone, this is Andrew Ty and welcome to my YouTube channel. So the Steam Winter Sale has now started, and there are a whole bunch of Steam games that work great on the Apple Silicon Mac. However, the big problem is finding out what games are actually compatible. So today I've put together a list of the top 15 macOS Steam games that not only work great on Apple Silicon Macs, but also come at a decent discount as well. So if you haven't subscribed already, then please consider subscribing and you'll be able to keep up to date with the latest Mac gaming news. So the first game we're going to be looking at is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and this is one of the best AAA macOS titles. It has insane graphics and it has great gameplay as well, and it gets showed off in a lot of videos because it has a really good benchmarking tool. So the sale here is pretty crazy. It's at minus 87%. You can buy the entire game with the DLC for just £9. If you go to the bundle and you just want to buy the core game, which I think is going to be plenty, this is going to be minus 67% off, which is pretty much the lowest that it's ever been, and you can get this for £7.58. So this is definitely highly recommended if you don't own this title already. So next up is the first-person shooter Metro Exodus. So this got a macOS port last year in 2021, and it remains one of the best-looking first-person shooters on Mac operating system. And you don't need an ultra-powerful Mac to play this. Even the base M1 runs this game beautifully. So if you look here, we can get the gold edition of the game for minus 75% off, and you can buy this for £8.74. If you don't want the extra DLC, you could buy the base game for just £6.24. Or if you want to get a really good deal, you should buy the Metro Saga bundle, which is a minus 84% off. In the bundle, you're going to get the Redux versions of Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light. And altogether, these are three insane, huge single-player campaigns and represent some of the best FPS experiences on macOS. So next up is Total War Warhammer 3, which is the last of the Warhammer 3 trilogy. This was released earlier in the year in February 2022. It is a strategy game with a mix of real-time and turn-based combat. It is being offered here at a minus 25% discount. So this is a higher price than a lot of the games on this list, but this is a very recent game. Total War Warhammer 3 now allows you to play the Immortal Empires beta, which is now out for macOS. So this allows you to run the mega combined map with all the factions from Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2. And in order to play it, you're going to have to own Total War Warhammer 3, so highly recommended. The entire trilogy works great on macOS and it represents thousands of hours of gameplay. So next up is the game Cult of the Lamb. So this came out very recently in August 2022. If we scroll down here, we can see that this is a minus 25% discount. So you can get this for £14. So the game is all about this lamb who's been saved by this mysterious god, and in return you have to build up a cult with a camp full of followers. So the main gameplay loop involves this rogue-like action dungeon area where you have to go ahead and kill loads of enemies and defeat bosses, and then you gather resources in order to build up your loyal village of cult followers and become more and more powerful. So make sure to check this game out. It runs fantastically on Apple Silicon hardware. So next up is Call of Duty Black Ops 3. So I've put this on the list because this is actually the only Call of Duty game that actually runs well on Apple Silicon Macs. This did come out in 2015 and it is an Intel build with a Metal Graphics API port, so it actually runs really well, especially the single player game. You should definitely not be buying this game for multiplayer because the macOS version of the game is siphoned off from the rest of the world and cannot play with Windows users. So you definitely shouldn't be buying the multiplayer starter pack because that only contains the multiplayer, which is basically dead. What you should be getting is this one called the Zombie Chronicles Edition, which also contains the base game, and this is a minus 67% off. So this is hugely discounted compared to the normal rate, which is £45, and this basically never goes on sale except for the big summer and winter sales. So definitely pick this up if you don't already own it and you want access to a really high quality AAA first person shooter that works great on Apple Silicon Macs. So next up is Civilization 6. So I'm sure this needs no introduction. It is a grand turn-based strategy game where you have to bring up your civilization, build cities, and basically compete with other nations either through military or scientific or cultural means. And if we scroll down here, we can see there's a pretty insane 90% off sales and get this for £5. The base game contains quite a lot of content. If you're interested in the kind of insane DLCs, we have a bundle here which is for 9 DLC items, and then we have this larger bundle for all 19 DLCs as well. So the base game is pretty cheap and the DLCs all added together add up to quite a large amount. Most people will agree that Civilization 6 isn't really complete without all of the DLCs and add-ons that they've been working on over the years. Either way, these are great deals, especially on the Apple Silicon Mac. So next up is the game Subnautica. So this is a first-person open-world crafting survival game, and basically what happens is that you crash land into the ocean, and what you need to do is to basically craft your way out of this situation. So the deal here is really good. It's minus 66% off. It is £8.50. So this is a huge amount of content. We also have its sequel Subnautica Below Zero, which also has a Mac port and also has a pretty good sale at 55% off at £11.24. So both the original Subnautica and its sequel both run relatively well on the base M1 chip, so make sure to check it out if you haven't done so already. So next up is Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. So this is the remake of the 2013 Stanley Parable and contains a whole bunch of new content compared to the original release. So if you've never played this game before, I describe it as an ironic, self-aware comedy game, which is all in first person, and it's all about your interactions with this knowing narrator.
If you can truly place your faith in another, then pick up the phone.
Stanley, did you just unplug the phone? No, that wasn't supposed to be a choice. How did you do that?
So if you haven't played this game before, I do highly recommend it, especially considering that this game only came out in April 2022. So this is a very recent release and it's a great deal as well. So next up is Disco Elysium, the final cut. So I describe this as a kind of RPG adventure game, and it is insanely in-depth how deep the conversations and RPG stats go. For example, in one bit at the beginning of the game, I'm trying to slip away unnoticed. However, I basically fail the dice roll. Because of the character traits I selected, my character decides to dive away while flipping off the bartender, not noticing that there's a lady in a wheelchair right behind me. I haven't played too much of this, but it does have a very good macOS port that runs fantastically even on the base M1. It is being offered at a 75% discount, so you can get the entire game and all of the content for £8.74. Make sure to check this one out. So next up is the game Hades, which is made by the same developers as the games Bastion and Transistor. And this is basically an action RPG roguelike, and basically every time you die you learn a little bit more and you get slightly more powerful. There are tons of different weapons and abilities and also synergies and strategies that are going to be different every single time you play the game. So this is being offered at a 50% discount. You get this for £9.74, and this is pretty good considering this game is around 2 years old and has a very good macOS port. So next up is Inscryption, which is this very atmospheric lo-fi kind of card deck building roguelike game. It was first released in October 2021, but it got a macOS port earlier this year, and this runs natively on macOS hardware. So you can get the game here for minus 40% off. It is £10.07. It's basically a deck building game where you can go ahead and choose different paths and fight different enemies and bosses. There are definitely some surprises on the way. It has some really excellent reviews, so there's a lot more than meets the eye, so make sure to check this out. So next up is Vampire Survivors. So personally, this is one of the most played games that I've played this year, especially on macOS. It runs natively and it has a huge amount of content, especially for the tiny price. So Vampire Survivors basically triggered this entire new genre where it's kind of like a bullet hell game with roguelike elements, and you don't really fire weapons, you kind of move around while enemies come towards you, and you have to collect currency in order to level up your character and then evolve different weapon types. So the graphics look kind of very lo-fi, but trust me, this is a really cool game. I really like playing this. It's also got a recent iOS port as well, which is free, but nothing beats playing this on a big screen on a Mac. So if you're interested in this game, you should definitely go ahead and check this out and buy it. So one of the reasons is that if you scroll down here, you can see that this is being offered at 20% off at £3.19. However, the price is only going to increase over time as more content is being added. So if you're interested in this at all, make sure to buy it at this discounted rate, because next year this could actually be more expensive. So next up is Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition. So this is the final version of the game, and this contains an insane amount of content. So if you don't know about this game, it's basically a very in-depth turn-based RPG. You have a party of 4 different characters, and you basically go around doing a whole load of quests. There's also a co-op mode as well, and there's virtually hundreds of hours of content in this Definitive Edition. It's being offered at 60% off at £12. Personally, I think that Baldur's Gate 3, which is also being made by the same Larian Studios, is actually going to be a better game. However, this is still in early access and it's not being offered on sale. So Divinity Original Sin 2 is probably the next best thing. It represents one of the best RPGs on macOS. So next up is the game Psychonauts 2. So this was originally released on PC in August 2021. However, it got its macOS port in mid-2022. So this is a very recent game. It's being offered here at 66% off. It is basically the sequel to the original Psychonauts game, which came out in 2005, which was really fantastic to begin with. And now we have a really high budget action platforming comedy game. It has some of the most interesting level and character design you're going to find on macOS. It comes from the mind of Tim Schafer, so expect lots of humor and jokes and also really great gameplay as well. So lastly, we're looking at Rogue Legacy 2. So this is the sequel to the original Rogue Legacy 1, and it was only released earlier in April 2022. So this is an action platformer roguelike, and basically every time you die, your children will succeed you, retaining some of your progress, making it a little bit easier to progress in this game as you're going to be dying quite a lot. So this is a fairly recent title. It's being offered at 25% off at £60.49. This is a pretty good deal considering that this was released only a few months ago. If you want a really good deal, you can check out the original game as well. This is being offered for £2.19 and it has a macOS port as well. This original was released in 2013, but it's still very much worth playing, especially at this really low price. So anyway, those are my picks for Mac games on the winter sale. If you want to find more Mac games, all you've got to do is go to the Steam website, go to categories, and then go to the macOS section here. And what I like to do is to scroll down and then look at the top sellers for macOS games, and you can find lots of other titles which are on sale and could be worth your time. So anyway, please leave a comment with the Steam Mac games that you've purchased so far. If you think there are other games that should make it to this list, then please make sure to leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.